Welcome to Out with Dan, the podcast that spotlights and examines the voices of LGBTQ+ authors, characters, and our allies. Together, we lift our voices and we tell our stories. I'm Dan White. Join me as I chat with this week's author. Hello and welcome back to Out with Dan. Today I'm honored to talk to Iris Yamashita about Village in the Dark. Welcome, Iris.
Thank you, Dan. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you. This is the second book in a series that sort of a lot of the characters in this book come back from the first book. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We see a lot of characters from the first book, but I also do introduce some new ones.
I can honestly say as a reader, this book completely stands on its own. So if anyone listening says, oh, well, I have to read the first one, I don't think that's the case. I think it would give you certainly a flavor of what goes on in the second one, because there are a lot of events that are mirrored from book one, but it certainly stands on its own. So I also know that you're an Academy Award nominated screenwriter. Congratulations for Letters from Iwo Jima. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you. Yes, it was a war film directed by Clint Eastwood.
Oh, that's pretty nice standing there. I like that. So do you find the screenwriting world and the novel writing world to be very different?
Yes, they are very different. It's very different market, very different process. The only thing that really carries over is storytelling, which kind of, I use the same sort of principles that I use from screenwriting over into the book writing, but the business is completely different.
That's what I would imagine. I know in Hollywood, there's so many different players involved in one project, whereas I would assume novel writing, except for editing and the publisher, that's basically your baby to create. Is that correct?
That's a good way to put it. In filmmaking, it's very collaborative. And if you're the screenwriter, it's sort of like you're just one piece in the machinery, and it takes a lot of machinery. And you're also a writer for hire, so you could be let go. The idea is probably not yours. Most of the time, ideas are not yours in screenwriting because it's a producer's idea, or it's working off of someone else's IP, or someone else's vision. So books are in that sense, they're the authors, because it's your original idea, it's your everything. You're the director, you're the casting agent, you're the set designer, and everything else.
I love it. I love it. Well, I would say that I'm not sure I want to go on vacation to Alaska with you, Iris, just so we're clear. Alaska is the only state I've not been to. So I will say that I am actually excited for Alaska, not only because it's the last state, but also because of your work. I really feel like I have a flavor of at least the setting of your book. So it's a setting of what I might call extreme isolation. To get to the little town, you have to go through a tunnel, which I know a lot of people are freaked out about going through tunnels. So you really did torture us a bit, didn't you?
Yes. The place is actually inspired by a real town in Alaska called Whittier, Alaska. And I did visit it, and I did stay there. And it is kind of claustrophobic. I mean, I think I didn't go there in winter. I would be afraid to go there in winter. But summer actually was quite beautiful. Once you're in the city, the views are spectacular. I stayed in that building that I actually write about. The city is all in one building, one high-rise building. The building was actually made for the military back in the 50s or something. And then it was converted to residential housing. But that it kind of explains why it's, this isolated building in the middle of nowhere. It was supposed to be secretive.
It's really interesting. I grew up in a very small town, which I like to call a village in eastern North Carolina. There were around 400 people. And so there are 205 residents in this building in your book. And I do think of, I noticed Ellie always keeps a pair of binoculars that she says she's looking out for her ex-husband and she's protecting everyone. But having grown up in such a small environment, there were always people looking. So you do a wonderful job in creating an environment where really they cannot escape, but yet by the real salt of the book, at least, or the soul of the book to me, is it takes a village, because in this book it really does take the village to band together.
Yes, that is a theme that I was considering, about community. There's the community of, basically, because you're so isolated that you really rely on your fellow neighbors when you need it and when you need help. And but you might not always love your neighbor. So you're kind of stuck with them. I mean, this is especially true in that city where everyone lives in one building. But the second book, called Village in the Dark, also refers to this community of, again, isolated in the middle of the wilderness, and it's run by women, and how they have kind of come up with their own rules because of who they are and where they are.
So you do something at the very first chapter of the book. Kara is having her husband and son's body exhumed. And when I was reading that, it caught my breath because I could feel it. You do such a great job in describing what, not only what's happening, but you give Kara such an emotion that as a reader, I could feel that emotion. How did that affect you as writing this?
Well, I originally, when I was writing the two-book series, coming from sort of the television or streaming and film world, I thought, "Oh, that would be a great kind of cliffhanger." And then my publisher in the book world is very different. It says, "No, you want to have standalone books." And and so I thought, "Oh, that would make actually a great beginning," where you're just curious about why are these bodies being exhumed from the grave. But I had to bring over, some of the story of Kara Kennedy's background. So that's where I felt like you have to explain what has happened, and how she's been kind of haunted and tormented throughout both book one and book two about the death of her family. So that's why I felt it was important to have that moment.
Yeah, so well done, Iris. So well done. And then in the second chapter, we meet Ellie, at least Ellie for this book. And I'm going to quote something she says because I snorted when I laughed out loud. She says, "Son of a red wattle hog sucking bitch." And that gives Ellie's character right there. So we go from Kara, who is, obviously upset having to exhume two bodies of loved ones in the first chapter, to Ellie in the second chapter, who basically whatever she thinks, it comes straight out of her mouth. And of course, I loved Ellie because I feel like she's a little bit of spirit animal for me. How did you feel about writing Ellie?
Well, it's always fun to have a character that, adds a bit of comic relief in a way, and they're fun to write because, when you have very serious things going on, and then the tone is very dark, I feel like you need sometimes moments of levity. And so I think that's what Ellie provides. And when I started writing her, she first appeared in the first book, and I just thought that I think she has a story to tell, and so I really wanna explore her more. And so and the other thing is that, what I learned in screenwriting is that when you write characters, you really want them to have, distinguishable voices, so that if you pull a line of dialogue, you would know which character is speaking. So that's always been sort of in the back of my head while I'm writing, and I always want each character. So I have three voices in this book, and I want them to be um, very different from each other. And so I really enjoyed writing Ellie, and I did have to go and look at what all the Southern expressions were.
Ellie answers the door one time in one of the scenes without her wig on. And that red wig, it meant a lot to me because I knew quite a few red wigged women growing up. And I'm like, I really got her. And of course, she drives a red truck or a red car. And it's like, of course it's red. It has to be. So I saw her and I did see. May I assume that Maya is the third of your three women voices?
Mia
Mia.
Upash is the third character, and she is from the village. Um, and she is I kind of wanted this village to be, even though it's closed off, it's still in a ways open to anyone who needs to be there. And so there are indigenous women, but there are also non-indigenous women. And then Mia is kind of an odd character because she's indigenous, but it's Japanese indigenous, which is Ainu. So she's half Ainu. And I think I threw that in there because when I was researching Alaskan indigenous people, that there were a lot of similarities with the Japanese indigenous, and I thought, well, that's kind of cool, and I just decided that I wanted to throw that in there.
I'm glad you did. I think for some of us who haven't read as much about it, the whole AAPI region, there's so many similarities all the way around the rim, no matter how far you go one way or another. I think that one nice thing is more indigenous people are being seen through authors who include them in their work. And that's a good thing because we all need to know how everyone functions so we can be a better society. And I loved your inclusion in that in this book.
Yes, and I was lucky enough to find someone that I could consult with from an Alaskan Indigenous Women's Resource Center. And so that was helpful because I also learned myself a little bit more, because we talk about violence in Alaska. It's the most violent state for women, especially among the indigenous population. So I kind of wanted to get that out there too, and it was great that I had someone I could talk to.
That is good. And it's good to get a local perspective so it gives the reader a flavor of what really goes on. I mean, honestly, you alluded to it earlier. This city is a place where a lot of broken souled people go. And there are a lot of people who go north to Alaska to sort of escape from whatever it is in their current reality, whether it's escaping from family or an abuse. There are quite a few characters in your book who are hiding out from people that want to harm them. And that, of course, creates a curiosity, and it also creates a bit of suspicion. Why is someone here? But yet you do, as an author, give them a lot of inclusion. They sort of collect those souls, and that's a fun thing to read.
Yeah, actually, when I went to visit Whittier, Alaska, which inspired the City Under One Roof, I was actually surprised to see how multicultural it actually is there. Everyone, not, well, I can't say everyone, but a lot of the inhabitants are from somewhere else. So I saw a lot of people from Samoa there.
Oh, okay.
Um, I saw people from who were Chinese, people who were Korean, people who um, are from Guam, which is where I used to live. So that was actually very surprising, and I thought that is so cool, and I want to have that as part of my setting as well, to be very inclusive in the characters. And And that was really a reason I fell in love with Whittier, Alaska, actually.
Well, and you also include something else. There's a passage where Ellie says about Amy, who is going to go away to Southern California or California for college. Ellie says, I bet she comes back with a different pronoun. And that was just a small, slight inclusion, but it was so wonderfully done. It wasn't anything over the top. It was just, hey, look, this is a possibility in life. And you included that so smoothly, Iris. Well done.
Thank you. I mean, I thought it was something that she might say.
I mean, I definitely agree. I mean, she is so aware of everything at every moment. I mean, when she stops and she's going to take her dog back from Jim, who's at the toll booth, and then she gives the dog back to him because she realizes Shane's in the car and it's not going to work out. I mean, she's just spot on. And as I said earlier, whatever she thinks, it just rolls right out. And probably, cost be damned. But at the same time, she's not only a humorous voice, I think she's sort of a straight ahead voice as well. And I like that a lot about her.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, of course, with all these different characters that you would that you would want to like them, obviously, if they're if they're a major character. But I also thought of in both the city and I call it Point Meteor, and in the village in the dark also, that all the people are very tough on the outside, because to live in Alaska, I think it takes a certain personality of toughness, but on the inside they're all kind of broken on the inside. So that's sort of a commonality that the people in the communities have.
And for anyone who doesn't know, this is obviously a big time thriller book, but you give us a little bit of romance as well in there. I really did love the romance between JB and Kara. I thought it was really quite well done and lovely. It gave, when you're doing a suspense, it's always nice to be able to catch your breath occasionally. And so it was nice to catch my breath with the two of them.
Thank you. I'm so glad you said that, because I felt like a weak spot.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I think the first draft that I turned in was not as good on the romance side. And my editor, and I have a really great editor, Tracy Bernstein, she really pushed me to explore that a little bit more, so that the end result was better than what I had started with.
Well, I'm glad that worked out, because even from just when Kara comes back to Meteor, you find that everybody has a preconceived notion of why she's back. And of course, I think she must have blushed 150 times in the first few chapters. And then even later on with her interaction with Mia, there are things that Mia feels about the two characters, JB and Kara, that we as an audience get to see how someone on the outside even notices. And so I thought that was very well done. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks to my editor.
She did a great job. So, Iris, do you have a website or social media you would like to share?
Yes, it's my name, which I'm sure is posted here somewhere.
It is on the screen. Perfect.
That's pretty easy. And then from my website, I have links to any social media that I have. So please check it out.
Fantastic. And if you're around Los Angeles on the 13th of February, I know you'll be at Vroman's bookstore with Naomi Hirahara. So I look forward to seeing you there.
That's correct. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Hang on for me just a second. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Out with Dan. You can find more information about this podcast and its host at OutWithDan.com. on Twitter at OutWithDan, and on Instagram and Facebook at GoOutWithDan. This podcast is hosted by Authors on the Air Global Radio Network, and the theme music is provided by bensound.com. Join us again soon for the next episode of Out with Dan.